GSMA. Et je voudrais vous remercier pour l'invitation. On est très heureux d'être ici et vous présenter dans cette Innovation Talk. Vous écoutez, je voudrais dire que oui, on entend français, on parle français aussi. Alors, si vous préférez poser vos questions en français, ça va, sans problème. Mais si ça ne vous dérange pas, on propose de faire la présentation en anglais. Just in case, to align that. We're very happy to be here. I'm here together with my colleague, Eugis. So Eugis, maybe if you would like to introduce yourself as well.
Sure. Thank you, Bartian. I'm sorry that I can't do the introduction in French as well, but I'm learning. I will get there one day. But my name is Eugis Anjos. I work at the Senior Engineer Manager in the Inclusive Tech Lab. And it's a pleasure to be part of this innovation talk and share with you a little bit of all the technologies that the lab is creating right now.
Great. Thank you, Eugis. And maybe if we look at the agenda for today, conclusion up front is already going to be that it's quite cramped. We have a lot of ground to cover. And we're very pleased to be amongst you. We've been looking forward to this talk because both Eugis and myself, we really work in the innovation space within the GSMA as part of our wider mobile money program, which sits within the foundation of GSMA. So really, we try to support our members and the wider mobile industry to advance mobile money propositions very strongly from the aspect of financial inclusion and a developmental agenda. And so specifically, both of us are also responsible for the facility called the GSMA Inclusive Tech Lab, which is our innovation facility, a playground for industry players to work together with us and really drive development of technologies that help drive financial and overall digital inclusion. But before we go there, that will take us towards the second half of the presentation, and Eugis will particularly be leading on that and share some of the highlights that we've been working on that we thought are most interesting for this setting, amongst others that we're working on. Before going there, we would also like to go through some of the highlights of our annual State of the Industry report, as was also the request indeed by Nicolas, as he mentioned, which is our annual report. It's the 10th edition of it, reflecting back on 10 years of mobile money, more or less, a bit longer, of course, but 10 years of this report, presenting the status of the industry on a global level, African level, Western Africa level, definitely also tapping into the footprint of Orange and also leaning heavily on the surveys that Orange opcos provide and based on which we develop these findings. And as we go there, straight on into the next slide, I would also like to mention that I will try to touch upon a little bit also in terms of not only where the industry stands today, but also how it is evolving and how the type of use cases are diversifying in the industry as it evolves over the past year and especially in the number of years to come. So maybe if we just look at some high-level numbers, I'd like to set the scene a little bit to provide you with some of the global trends in the mobile money ecosystem. In the last 10 years, we see a service that has grown from originally East Africa really into a global scale with coverage across the African continent, but just as well very strong in Asia as well as in Latin America. And also has extended far beyond peer-to-peer payments and cash-in, cash-out type of services into all sorts of new use cases that I mentioned already. So the headline figure of this year, the 10th edition of this industry report, is really quite remarkable, which is that the industry in 2021 processed over $1 trillion of value. So a very impressive number. And more than that, it's growing by almost a third since 2020, a year before. And some of this growth can be attributed to the increased access to and also the use of mobile services due to the ongoing effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has really accelerated digitization. also in mobile money. Components of the mobile money ecosystem contributing to the significant value in global transactions are that there are now more registered accounts. So that grew by 18% year over year to 1.35 billion in 2021. 90 days active accounts, so meaning people that use the service on a 90 days basis, grew to 518 million. And it's very encouraging to see active accounts keeping pace with new accounts being registered. However, it's also worth noting that many of the registered mobile money accounts are not being used very much, and the reasons and barriers behind this vary widely by country context. But at least that shows that there's a lot of growth opportunity, even amongst existing registered users, to crank up their activity levels. Access to and also availability of mobile money services has increased in the last year, with the number of active agents growing by 18% year over year to a staggering 5.6 million. And the number of live mobile money deployments globally has also grown. So to put it in context, over 10 years, this has grown from around 170 services in 70 countries in 2012 to nearly double that number, 316 services in nearly 100 countries in the last year. Some of the drivers behind the 2021 growth in transaction volumes and transaction values can be attributed to the diversification of the ecosystem that I mentioned, that many customers need the value of in their daily lives. So merchant payments has been a driver of growth. Merchant payments have doubled since 2020, grown to 66 million in the last year, and accounted for 21% of the value circulating in the mobile money ecosystem. So that's also 10% up in the past 2 years.
So that's merchant payment online and also in the streets.
Yes, this number is the combined number across all the channels, so online, on site, in app, any online channel, as well as in the streets. And we've got, of course, a further breakdown of those data. So these are the high level numbers, of course.
Shall I move to the slide?
Yes, that's all right. And as I wrap up, so another driver would be on international remittances, which has also been one of the leading use cases. And I will get to both those use cases in due course. As I mentioned, the number of services has gone up significantly in the past years. I think it's really good to look at the number of users that are actively using the service. So here you see the two discs to compare the numbers from 2012 towards 2021. So in 2012, mobile money was largely still an Eastern Africa phenomenon, with Sub-Saharan Africa accounting for as much as 84% of all active accounts. So active meaning active on a 30-day basis. And you see that that mix has clearly changed in the past year over those 10 years of time. So Sub-Saharan Africa is now accounting for over half of the active accounts, but South Asia is also clearly come into play. And we as GSMA, we believe that there's still a lot of growth in this number in terms of activating your existing users, because there's such a significant gap between active users and total registered users.
The mobile money usage in Asia and South Asia is really, really impressive. Is it with the same specificity as in Africa? That is to say, you can transfer money, use your mobile to pay and so on, without the need of having a bank account?
That depends a little bit on the jurisdiction of the country in play. In principle, yes. However, there are certain markets, for instance, Pakistan is such an example, in which mobile money services cannot be offered without combined offering from a bank. So the mobile money providers are always teamed up with a particular bank, and that is due to local regulations. However, there's other markets, and mostly in Southeastern Asia, where that condition does not apply, and they work very much in terms of the same, similar at least, regulations as we see in Africa. Great. So I think one of the figures for this year that I mentioned, processing $1 trillion per year, growing 31% compared to the year before. This is a number that we initially forecasted the industry to reach significantly later than now, but several years of rapid growth made us revise our forecast. And this is partly due to the pandemic, but also due to general positive drivers towards digitization. So in that sense, the industry is ahead of the curve that we predicted based on earlier year data and the forecast that we extracted from that. And another landmark number reached this year is that for the first time, peer-to-peer transactions topped 386 billion, or more than, if you put it into nice numbers, $1 billion per day. So that also shows really how much growth there is in the ecosystem. Just to give you some high-level numbers that show the steep growth in our industry on a global level. Now, if we explore that a little bit further in the next slide, the breakdown of the 1 trillion in transaction values at the global level. If you can move to the next slide, Nicholas, thank you very much.
Teams delay.
Oh, there you see. Sorry for that. So you see that the vast majority of the transaction mix is still dominated by peer-to-peer transactions and cash in and cash out. That's a given. At the same time, core mobile money use cases, we see that there's a proliferation of that. And you see, if you compare these two graphs, compared to what that looked like years ago, that all the new use cases are gradually eating into this pie chart. So clearly there's a diversification of services, but there's also a clear correspondence of that into the monetization streams for mobile money providers. I think that's a very important message to realize. If we flip to the next slide, if we look at the past years and especially this year, what has been remarkable, therefore, is the growth of partnership-driven transactions, which we tend to call ecosystem transactions. And the most impressive growth is the one observed with merchant payments, which almost doubled in the year, as I mentioned, compared to the year before. So you see here that there's definitely still growth in the more traditional use cases, peer-to-peer, cash in, cash out. But if you look at the growth potential of some of those other use cases, you see that they are hitting higher numbers. So in absolute volume, they may still be smaller, but in terms of growth potential, they are definitely cases to pay attention to as a mobile money provider.
Yeah, it's as if there is no more one killer feature in the mobile money services, but a portfolio of diversified services that the user are expecting from their mobile money service provider.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you see that the services that are successful in doing that are typically also very successful in building the required partnerships with other players in the financial ecosystem that are required to optimally create those products and serve the customer. So I would say let's dive into a couple of those use cases that we lifted out just in terms of highlights. Coming back to merchant payments. So merchant payments reached almost 70 billion USD in transactions in 2021, as growing by, to be precise, 94% compared to the year before. So almost doubling, as I mentioned before. And this is by far the faster growing transaction type this year. And there are many factors why this has been the case. So a continuation of the pandemic's digitization drive with many businesses turning to mobile money to get paid away from cash. Based on our survey that we've held, the number of active merchants grew almost half between the end of 2020 and 2021. So that's also testimony of that. And what we believe is maybe is that a great number of small businesses who previously used the P2P channel to get paid have now really switched to the merchant payment channel. And this is partially thanks also to mobile money providers making the onboarding process easier. And for instance, by enabling also remote onboarding, enabling agents and small merchants to onboard in a smooth manner.
And so mobile money service providers do not only need to have a portfolio of services in their mobile app, but they need also to design specific services for these merchants, for these small businesses, to help them grow their business and manage it more easily.
Very much true. And what you often see is that offerings in the space of merchant payments, be it in shop or online, are accompanied by stock management or cash register management or whatever it may be, indeed to build a valuable proposition for such merchants.
Yeah.
Liquidity, optionality, these type of things. Great, indeed. So looking at international remittances, we saw significant growth once again in the last year. At the height of the pandemic in 2020, we had observed that many in the diasporas, of course, had turned to mobile money to send money home, as traditional channels were not always available, or at least more difficult to use. So 2021 is really proving that this process is continuing. And this is not just a matter of practicality, as you can see from the charts, which is a World Bank resource. Mobile money is the most affordable way to send money abroad. Yet mobile money-enabled international remittances constitute less than 5% of the overall international remittance flows. So that really also highlights the potential that is yet to be untapped for this channel.
Okay, so the 3.9% of all international remittances in 2021 correspond to $16 billion.
It's to be read a little bit differently. Yes, the 5% compares to $60 billion. The 3.1% means the cost of the transaction.
Okay.
So for every dollar that I sent into remittance, that's the cost, which is significantly lower than the other channels that you see running over bank or cash or credit cards or debit cards.
Okay, sorry.
So that's a very interesting proposition for mobile money providers to provide the cheaper solution for people that in general already quite keen on saving money that they want to send to their family at home.
And for this mobile money international remittances, I imagine that mobile money operator, which is a local money, partner with other startups that do the money currency change from one country to another?
Absolutely. Typically, yes. And again, hence the importance of building such partnerships and making the platforms technologically ready to connect.
We had the MFS Africa, startup, which is now a unicorn, here in our innovation talk 1.5 years ago.
Aha, I see. Yes, definitely. We know them very well, of course. And there is a multitude of such players in the market.
The CEO, he studied in Paris, actually.
That's right. I'm aware of that. Yeah. All right. So before handing over to Eugis shortly, and we talk a bit more about the innovations we're doing, let me wrap up with one of the last use cases that we feel is really important, thinking about the evolution of the industry, bill payments. So used for purposes such as energy payments, including both grid electricity, but also pay-go solar services. But beyond that, also taxes and other type of services. We saw an outstanding growth, estimated around 37% compared to the last year, reaching 61 billion USD. And as you can see, 68% of providers who responded to our surveys, so that means the mobile money providers that participated in the State of the Industry report, they reported that their top billers are electricity companies, but there is a clear potential to digitize more payments such as tax, other utilities, or even vehicle rental, which is something that we see popping up, for instance. So there's a multitude of new use cases that can be unlocked through bill payments. Again, a tremendous opportunity that can be unlocked through building partnerships.
Thank you.
Great.
I send a short poll to close your chapter.
Mm-hmm.
To ask the participants what trend, what analysis struck them the most in the GSMA mobile money report that you just presented, and they can use keywords for that.
Fantastic. Unfortunately, the resources contain a wealth of data and insights, information. Unfortunately, in view of the time, of course, I only focused on the highlights. I would like to maybe conclude by saying that as GSMA, we are very thankful to the participants to this survey on which it is built. Orange is one of the main respondents of this survey, and in return, therefore, we always provide benchmark reports back to Orange, which we've recently done actually in the past weeks. So we provided back the benchmark reports based on both on Orange group level as well as on the individual OPCO level for those OPCOs that provided their data. So they're available within the organization.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was very clear and insightful for us. Thank you.
Great. If you are all ready, I would propose to shift gears a little bit and then move away from the more bird's eye perspective on where the industry stands in terms of macroeconomic numbers, and talk more a little bit about the type of innovations that we see in the industry, and particularly that we have developed within our innovation facility, the Inclusive Tech Lab. And Eogis will tell a lot more about that. Maybe just on a high level, to introduce the facility. Basically, we have launched this facility around 3 years ago, with the idea for the GSMA to be a more active player, not only on the advocacy and research level, but really to help drive technologies that matter when it comes to financial inclusion and digital inclusion. So what we've built is a playground for industry players to work together with us on those technologies that they would like to advance. And we thereby really take a hands-on approach. So we research those topics, we test them, we develop those assets, and ultimately we really try to make them happen in markets. So we work together with our industry partners, including Orange, as Eogis will tell, and really build those solutions and try to pilot them, if not fully launch them in market. I think in view of the time, I would like to keep it this brief and hand over to Eogis, who will then share some insights on 3 topics that we selected for your interest.
Just a quick question. Do you have a specific geographical focus for the lab or not?
We focus on mobile money markets so far, so that is clear. So far, our focus has gone effectively to Africa, across the continent, as well as South Asia.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Bart. Could you pass for the next slide? Thank you, Nicola. So the idea here is, as Bart mentioned, to give you a quick introduction about 3 of the main projects that we have. Of course, we have all the ongoing projects, and I'd be glad to answer questions by the end of the presentation or even after the innovation talk. So the first project that we have in the lab, we named it Biometrics for All, because the target was actually bring biometric solutions to any kind of market and provide more inclusion. So in this project, we try to highlight the importance that it could be to use biometrics for many purposes, not just to increase the security of the systems, but also to provide different approach to approve operations or to different use cases like reset a PIN number, for example, provide accessibility for new customers, reach customers that speak specific languages or dialects. So all of these requirements from the industry made us to bring this project that we unite all these different requisites in one solution that would be the biometrics for all. So we want to demonstrate the potentials of biometrics for identification, authentication, and authorization, but also to show them that it's not so expensive, it's not so costly to implement biometric solution in and provide innovation for emerging markets. So this website on the left is the website of the project. So for each project that I speak, we have a landing page that you can get more information there, but also feel free to contact us if you need any further explanation about the subject or how we could help you to create new features or to evolve the biometrics for all to adapt to your needs. So if you can pass to the next slide, Nicola.
Yes, just a quick question. You mentioned that
sure.
It is sorry, it is designed also for in a multilingual context. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. Because the fact that we target any market, as Bartian said, we are working in Africa and Asia, we had to create a solution that could be easily adaptable to different languages. For example, so we have two main points here. The first point is that the solution that we create, we can translate to any desired language that you wish. For example, imagine that we create a call center in English and French, but then you need to translate that to Atlantic language to use in Senegal. And then just using one script that was created inside the project, you can just translate in the file, and now the call center use that specific language to talk to the user. So these kind of facilities we try to implement just to make the platform more flexible. And the other approach is that when you use some kinds of biometrics like voice recognition, the good point is that it doesn't matter if it's a different accent or a different dialect, you still can use that to provide authentication and authorization for different users.
Thank you.
So yeah, for this project, as I was mentioning, our target was emerging markets. So we could not only create something that could be useful in a fancy app, in a last version of an iPhone, for example. We had to think about all the range of phones that we had in our markets. So we target low-tech environments, including feature phones, for example. And for that, our solution had a modular architecture. That was when I mentioned about the different languages that we could easily translate. We create this architecture that could be adapted to any kind of solution. We consider that if someone in Africa or Asia or any market wants to use our solution as a support to create their own solution, they could still take some pieces of the code that we create and adapt that to their own solution. Because everything that we create inside the lab is open source, and we make that available for the community. So this modular architecture allows us to create several use cases. So that was one of the projects that we had with Orange, that were where Orange brought us the specific needs they had for specific use cases, and then quickly could integrate that inside the architecture that we create, and then evaluate assess the possibility of the use of biometrics for those use cases. The other potential that this architecture brings is that we could adapt, or you could include different modalities for biometrics. So right now we have our system working with voice recognition, fingerprint recognition, and face recognition. For fingerprint, we use cameras to detect the fingers, because again, we are targeting low-tech environments. So we need to consider that not all mobile phones, they will have a sensor to read the fingerprint. Also, different channels of communication. We can use the app, we can use voice calling an IVR call center, we can use SMS, USSD codes. So we create also a part of our architecture that deals with these different channels of communication. And also different biometrics providers. So we do not create inside the lab the final biometric solution, but we can allow anyone that wants to connect to our solution to provide the biometrics solution they create. It rather be to voice or face recognition. And that way, if any of the industry players wants to test 1, 2, or 3 or 4 different suppliers in the market, they can do that using BOL and see which one could attend better the expectations they have. Right now, we have the call center done and a mobile application that's available for Android and iOS. And again, all this technology was made to low-tech environments. So we tested all the use cases using low-resolution cameras, for example, just to guarantee that an old phone where the cameras doesn't have a good quality would still capture the face for the face recognition or the fingerprint on those cameras. And the next slide is just to mention if you want to test and try our solution. So again, we have in Apple Store and Google Play, but right now we have the IVR call center where you can test the voice recognition in 3 different languages. We have in English, there is a UK and US number. We have in French, that was the project that we had with Orange. Then we included new use cases for that call center, plus we translated all the call center to French. And then we have in Urdu as well. That was a project that we had with Telenor, that if you can pass for the next slide, Nicola.
Yeah,
so
yeah, please go on.
Yeah, just to close the biometrics project. So we are already providing value to the industry. So we had a project with Telenor that was exactly that Urdu version of the call center. They would like to see how voice recognition and also the other kinds of biometrics work. And more recently, we had the pleasure to work with Orange to trial the use of voice recognition and create new use cases to try to bring real problems they had in different markets, essentially using voice recognition to reset PIN, to make payments using QR code or using P2P transactions, or using a merchant payment number. So all this call center is now available in French as well. And I think by the end of the presentation, I can share the number so you can test and send feedback, and also if you need any other support.
When you say it is open source modules, does it mean that it's on the shelf that someone can connect, sign in, connect, and start using it, like with a standard API? Or do you mean that it's open source, but still one has to have a human contact and start co-develop together to make the project happen?
The second choice. So what you do, because we do in a very generic way all the solutions that we create, any market play, they need to adapt that to their needs. For example, if you see the interface for the app is purple because that's one of the colors for the lab. But if Orange is deploying an application to use voice recognition, for sure, they you change the colors to orange, they you put the logo, they do some small change in the app. Just giving an example for the app. What we do with the open source is that we create each of these models inside the program, communicating among them using an API as well, as you mentioned. So it makes easier for if someone just need one specific model inside the entire architecture, they can just remove that one and plug their own solution, and they can play around with those different models. But it still requires some extra work to adapt that solution to your market.
How many people and how long did you work on this project?
The biometrics for all began last year, so we have around 1 year since the project was released. Okay. We already have some important meetings. The one with Orange was released, if I'm not wrong, please Bart, correct if I'm wrong, in February this year or March this year. Yeah, more or less this time.
Quite fast.
Yeah, we began in November last year. Okay. Sorry, Nicola.
Shall I move to the next slide?
Sure. So the next one is another big project that we have inside, not just the lab, but the entire mobile money team, that is about the GSMA mobile money API specification. So this is a common technical language that we create inside the mobile money team to enable the evolution, but also the integration between different mobile money providers, service providers, and any other element inside the mobile money ecosystem. So the page that you see on the left is our developers portal, where you can provide lots of information about this API specification and how to implement it. Also, there is some tools and facilities to help the developers who wants to create their own customized API under this specification. The idea of this specification is that we can bring a full environment, a full place to collaboration and harmonize all the APIs that we are using for mobile money in the industry. So we try to reduce the complexity once we have a standard and a specification that the APIs can follow. We avoid fragmentation, that is different players inside the industry with different technology and making quite difficult for them to communicate. So once all the players are using the same specification, it makes much easier any kind of integration or interoperability among those players. With that, we can reduce the time to market for sure, and the integration. We can increase the industry capability since we are working together in the evolution of this specification. And finally, we can provide financial inclusion because this would make the time to market for new services providers and new merchants to engage with the APIs much quicker and also simple. So the mobile money API specification right now has these main use case, the 8 main ones, where I think that some of them Bart already mentioned, the merchant payments, disbursements, international transferences, but we also have bill payments, agent services, recurring payments, this account linking. So we continue evolving and increasing the number of possibilities that the specification brings. With the specification, we can give a direct support to those industry players that are using our specification. So we can help with directly technical support, but also with gap analysis about the services that are being provided. We can help them with the engagement into this entire ecosystem, not only for direct service providers, but also to provide interoperability among different institutions. And to make it even easier, recently we launched some new tools and SDKs. So anyone that is interested in use our API specification, they have over 500 different scenarios created into code samples, code snippets, and SDKs that they can easily adapt and help the developers to create solutions faster to the market.
Did you?
So those are.
Sorry. Did you imagine to create a contest among the developers for to award those who would create the most impactful scenarios leveraging on the mobile money API?
That's a really good point. We had hackathons in the past, and we plan to have that in the future as well. We have already a community online that all the working groups, all the companies that we are working to improve the specification, they bring scenarios like that. I think that when we talk about the development side, it's quite natural for the developers. They always try to find errors and bugs and what is not working properly. So that is the place where we can discuss these things and evolve. Currently, our version is in the version 1.2 of the specification. That was exactly after we reviewed some points that they were raised by the community, both developer community, but also the working groups. But I think that hackathons are essential to bring these challenges to the developers to try, not just to bring potential change for the specification, but also to help the community of developers to understand more the specification and then facilitate this integration with service providers. Because one thing that the specification is good is to reduce this time. Once you have the SDKs done, once you have the specification that already work with different players in the industry, any developer could create so much faster the solution or integrate to a mobile money operator. So this helps a lot, the fact that we have the specification done. So inside this project, we recently also released a compliance verification service. So the idea with this service is that right now we have a number of players that are following our specification, and this number is increasing quite quickly. So the idea of this service is that anyone that is interested in creating an API that follows the specification, they could engage with this platform. They could plug their own API, their own solution. They could test the solution. After they test, they can submit that test for verification to our team. And then our team can verify if all the conditions, all the endpoints, all the services that the API is working are correct in relation of our specification, are following the specification. And then that is one we can make the players in the industry compliant with the GSMA mobile money API specification. So this is an interesting service that was released recently. We already have some players that are engaging and being compliant. And the idea is that we can support or create this environment that makes even easier for the industry players to test how the APIs are being created. And just to finalize, so right now the specification has evolved substantially to the point that the lab needs the help of the entire industry to evolve or to understand which direction we go with the specification. So we have 8 use cases as mentioned before, but we have many scenarios. You have like over 700 scenarios already that are approached. So right now we have the working groups, that is a group of all these companies, mobile operators, but also mobile money wallet providers, and many other players in the industry that are somehow interested or using directly the GSMA mobile money API specification. And then the working groups is the place where we can analyze what we have, but also learn what the needs are to evolve this specification or to put this specification into the direction that the industry is going. So we have meetings between 2, 3, and 4 times per year. This working group is already divided in subgroups for specific categories of the mobile money scenarios, like disbursements or merchant payments, because it's growing so fast that we are beginning to divide in subgroups to understand better which direction we go in each market or in each different use case. So yeah, so we create this network a time ago, and it's still evolving, and more players are involving with our working group initiative. And as you see, Orange is one of the main players that we have. And the last project that I would like to talk is about the tokenization. It is a recent project also that we released this year. The idea of the tokenization began with the need of women or gender protection during mobile money transactions. In some places, most of the places, when you do a mobile money transaction, we use our mobile number, because that's the main key to provide the transaction. That is our account number. But in some places, the people, they were at the moment that they exposed that number, the security was reduced, because then they could receive calls for that number or receive messages. And this problem, when we brought this problem with some partners, we saw that using a token instead of the real number could help to provide more safety and more security for those users. So this is the tokenization project that I will talk a little bit about it for you. If you could pass to the next slide.
Just a quick question. It's written,
sure.
Solution is expected to benefit women. Is there a specific focus on the women?
Well, that's a good point of technology. When you create technology, anyone can use that kind of technology. But the need was perceived initially by women. Like
Oh,
in some countries, the women they were being harassed because they were using the phone numbers and receiving calls uh, for their
ah,
personal number. So that is how the need began. But right now, the use of token could be used by anyone and could be good to anyone.
okay, okay.
So the solution that we create to create a virtual environment to show how the token solution could work. Again, we always target low tech environments. So we create a solution that could work both with a feature phone or a smartphone. The solutions we can use both SMS message or USSD message. Um, and during the test of the solution, you can simulate both the user, how the user behaves, and how the user can exchange the phone number to a token. But also, you can test how the agent would see a transaction that comes only with a token and not a phone number. The idea that we use here is that the token use the same amount of characters, the same amount of numbers as a phone number. So for the agent, it looks more transparent. It looks like a phone number, but actually is a token, is a fake phone number. So it makes easier the to the user to remember. So it could provide more a better user experience trying to continue with the same amount of number. So for this project, we have currently 5 use cases that are being tested. So the user can create token, delete token, could use cash in and cash out transactions and merchant payments. Cash in and cash out both initiated by the user or initiated by the agent or the merchant. So all this environment is available online. So anyone that would like to see how the token solution works can go to our tokenization project landing page and test directly there. You can test using a simulation online with a virtual phone, but you can also enroll with your phone and test sending message through your phone to our server and receiving the message on your own phone. The idea here, again, as you mentioned before, Nicola, is that the solution that we create is open source, but also plug and play. So if someone wants to part of the solution, let's say, I want to create token, but only for a solution that works with USSD for future phones, then they can go inside our solution, take those modules, and easily try to implement inside their own code and their own solution, even because this needs to access the operator's database. So it needs to be customized to adapt to any industry player. So this project right now, one of the players in the industry, in the next slide, that we have tested was with MTN Ghana, that they identified.
Sorry, we cannot show any MTN slide here. It's I'm really sorry.
Just jump
Just
for the 25th.
Just joking. I sent a short poll to ask people which innovation they feel could make the greatest impact in Africa. And of course, you can select the free project if you like the free project, or you can select 2, or you can select 1. Oops, MTN. Oops.
Well, should I remove on time?
No, no.
Well,
We
no,
like
yeah,
MTN. They are very innovative.
yeah, they actually they raised this need in Ghana, the need for token. So that was one of the main triggers that we had some initial tests with them. They brought some needs in terms of use case for us to implement. So we had the token solution, but it's always good when we begin a project inside the lab to be aligned with a mobile operator, because then we know the real problem they are facing, and then we can create the technology to solve that specific problem. So they brought some use cases and needs, then we could implement inside this project. But also the Gates Foundation, they were very glad to that we are working with gender and women inclusion projects. So these are 2 players that we had mentioned in some blogs that we released in the media recently. So these are only 3 projects that we have in the lab, but we have other initiatives regarding interoperability, API interoperability, or API productization to help the operators how to attract the developers and to make the life easier for developers when implementing APIs or following our API specification. And we are always innovating. So if you have any idea of an innovation project that could help or try to solve a problem that you are facing right now, and if this problem has innovation but also financial inclusion, the lab would be interested in hearing from you. I think that's it, but I'm open for questions if you have.
Thank you. What a great and timely presentation. I'm impressed. We have repeated this session. We have rehearsed this session 5 times to reach this result. Very nice doing. Any question from the audience? I see Francois is raising his hands. Please go on, Francois.
I was clapping and just to say thank you before we leave in 60 seconds. I'm very much interested into the biometric aspect. I suppose I can find some material on your website, and I understood that this is something that you investigated along with some Orange resources as well. So we'll look into that afterwards. So I just wanted to thank you for the great presentation we had today. Thank you.
Yeah, they put the Cédric Lemaire was involved in the biometric or in the mobile money API. I don't remember.
Biometrics.
In both, to be honest, but especially yeah, as well as Bertrand. Yeah.
And in 10 seconds, how do you see the future of this and the traction that this topic has been having recently?
I would say we're going to see a lot of traction, provided I must add that local regulations allow you as a mobile money provider to progress in this domain. The example I give is the other partner that we've worked with is EasyPesa, the largest mobile money provider in Pakistan. So they were very pleased with the pilot that we've done. Then they kind of hit a hurdle because they couldn't fully roll out. But recently, they were actually motivated by the regulator in market to allow for digital and biometric KYC. So they've actually implemented fingerprint recognition, camera-based amongst their customers. And they have a very sizable customer base because of the population of Pakistan being so large.
Okay, interesting. Thanks a lot.
Have question? It's time to put them in the chat or to speak in your mic.
There we go. Thank you, Nicolas. Thank you both.
So, one last question, no question?
Maybe I would just like to finalize by saying what Euji said, we are always looking for new ideas. So if it is of interest to you to collaborate with us, it could be along the lines of project we've presented today, but we're always happy to hear what's on your mind and whether the GSMA as your industry association can play a role in making that happen.
Thank you very much. It was really a nice presentation on the mobile money trends and also to know the existence of the tech lab at the GSMA, inclusive tech lab. Maybe not all the 30 participants did not know you were existing. We know that you are alive, and as we have innovation ideas, surely there will be some contact with you in the future to work together.
Fantastic. Looking forward to that moment.
Thank you.
It's been a real
much.
pleasure. Merci beaucoup.
Have a nice day, all.
Merci.
Bye bye.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Au revoir.
Congratulations.
Merci, au revoir.
Au revoir.
Merci, au revoir.